Welcome to today's Psych with Sigmund, where we explore the fascinating world of psychology. I'm your host, Sigmund, and today we're going to delve into the concept of egocentrism. This psychological phenomena affects us all to some degree, and understanding it can help us become more empathetic, effective communicators, and better relationship builders. So, what is egocentrism? In simple terms, egocentrism refers to the tendency to see the world from our own perspective, often without considering others' viewpoint. This concept was first introduced by Swiss psychologist Jean Piaget, who observed that children tend to be egocentric in their thinking, assuming that everyone shares their thoughts and feelings. As we grow and develop, this egocentric thinking can persist, influencing how we interact with others and navigate social situations. To better understand egocentrism, let's dive into the theoretical background. One major psychological theory that explains egocentrism is the social learning theory, proposed by Albert Bandura. According to this theory, we learn new behaviors and attitudes by observing and imitating others. However, when we're egocentric, we tend to focus on our own experiences and perspectives rather than considering the views of those around us. Another important framework for understanding egocentrism is the theory of mind, which suggests that humans have a unique ability to attribute mental states, such as thoughts, feelings, and intentions, to ourselves and others. However, when we're egocentric, our theory of mind can be impaired, making it more challenging to understand and empathize with others. A classic study by Piaget demonstrated that children as young as 3 years old exhibit egocentric thinking, assuming that everyone shares their perspective. More recent studies have shown that adults can also be prone to egocentric thinking, especially in situations where they're under stress or experiencing strong emotion. One fascinating example of egocentrism in action is the false consensus effect, where we tend to overestimate the extent to which others share our opinions and beliefs. This phenomenon was first identified by psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky, who found that people often assume that their own views are more common than they actually are. So, how can understanding egocentrism help us in our everyday life? By recognizing when we're being egocentric, we can make a conscious effort to listen more actively, ask questions, and consider alternative perspectives. This can lead to improved relationships, better communication, and more effective conflict resolution. In therapeutic settings, addressing egocentrism can be an important aspect of treatment for conditions such as narcissistic personality disorder or borderline personality disorder. By working with clients to develop a more nuanced understanding of others' perspectives, therapists can help them build stronger, more empathetic relationships. To illustrate this point, let me share an example from my own practice as a psychologist. I once worked with a client who was struggling to connect with his colleagues at work. He felt like they were always misunderstanding him, and he would often become frustrated and defensive in meetings. As we explored his communication style, it became clear that he had a tendency to be egocentric. He would dominate conversations, interrupt others, and assume that everyone shared his perspective. Through our therapy sessions, my client learned to recognize when he was being egocentric and made a conscious effort to listen more actively and consider other people's viewpoints. He started asking questions, seeking feedback, and trying to understand where his colleagues were coming from. As a result, his relationships with his coworkers improved significantly, and he became a more effective team player. In conclusion, egocentrism is a complex psychological concept that affects us all to some degree. By understanding its roots in child development, its persistence into adulthood, and how it influences our interactions, we can work towards becoming more empathetic, effective communicators, and better relationship builders. Remember, recognizing your own egocentrism is the first step towards change, so take a moment to reflect on your own thoughts, feelings, and behaviors and see if you can find ways to become more aware of other people's perspectives. As you go about your day, try to practice what I call perspective taking. Actively attempt to see things from another person's point of view. Ask yourself questions like, what might this person be thinking or feeling? How might they perceive this situation differently than I do? By doing so, you'll not only improve your relationships, but also become a more empathetic and compassionate person. That's all for today's Psych with Sigmund. Remember to like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, may your ego find balance between pleasure and reality.